been watching President Trump speak in front of the new Air Force One. It's a luxury Boeing jet donated from Qatar. It's worth $400 million, and it has a new paint job. It's so different than the old Air Force One, which was baby blue that was picked out during the JFK administration. Now there's a new look. Trump will be leaving Joint Base Andrews very soon, and he's heading to Camp David. But why is he going to Camp David this weekend? Could it be, perhaps, to get some rest? He doesn't sleep, and this week certainly has been a whirlwind, or is something else going on that brings him there? After Sunday night's UFC fights at the White House, he jumped on the old Air Force One at 3 a.m. He then jetted across the ocean to the G7 in France. There he met with world leaders, negotiated, hopefully, an end to the war with Iran. Then yesterday at 4 a.m., he arrived back at the White House. So why is he back on the road now for Camp David? We're going to have more on that later this hour. But first, on her last day as Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard dropped a bombshell about an alleged COVID cover-up. It involves Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized, self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president by restricting his access to the vital facts he needed to keep the country safe. It's time you know the truth.
Hundreds of documents were released on the DNI website. One of the claims is that Dr. Anthony Fauci used millions of taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous research at the Wuhan lab in China. That is from where some U.S. intel experts believe coronavirus leaked.
Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions.
We reached out to Dr. Fauci for a response to the now former DNI director. We have not heard back. Fauci has denied allegations like this in the past.
The accusation being circulated that I influenced these scientists to change their minds by bribing them with millions of dollars in grant money is absolutely false and simply preposterous.
19th of 2025, during President Biden's final hours in office, Biden issued Dr. Fauci a preemptive pardon. The pardon includes possible wrongdoing between January 1st, 2014 and the day Biden pardoned him. Former chairman of the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic and former Ohio Republican Congressman Brad Wenstrup joins me. Nice to see you again, sir. And obviously, these are quite surprising statements by the now former director of the DNI. What do you think? Did Dr. Fauci lie under oath to Congress, and was he behind some sort of sinister plan?
Well, you know, you can define the word sinister one way or another, but there was certainly motive to take his hands off of this as much as possible. You can go back to 2012 when he was asked about gain-of-function research, and he was very much for it, and he was asked whether it could possibly get out of a lab and cause a pandemic, and he said the benefits outweigh the risk. That's documented. When we asked him in the transcribed interview several things, but we asked him about this particular funding for gain-of-function research with EcoHealth Alliance, and his response was, you know, I sign a lot of these grants. I don't know what's in them because they're reviewed first, and my job is only to sign them. Well, you can take that for face value. Then who is responsible? And even when we asked about the fact that EcoHealth Alliance didn't comply with the grant, they weren't doing the reporting, he said, oh, that's over in compliance. So he was ready to wash his hands from all of this. But the scientists he talks about, if you listen to what he just said, then the clip that you showed, it struck me that he said, it's preposterous that I offered them a bribe. We never found any evidence that he offered them a bribe, but he gathered them together. And as they said in their own words, in their Slack messages and other emails, they said, this is being prompted for us to write that this came from nature. It's being prompted by Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins. They called them the Bethesda Boys. And even on the day when Dr. Fauci went on the White House lawn and said, these brilliant scientists have determined that this came from nature, They were quietly in their own emails saying, we still can't rule out that this is engineered, because they knew it looked like it. They knew that it was. These are people that do gain of function research. They all had a motive to make this come from nature. There's a lot of blood on people's hands. I do have a question too that I still don't have answered. And that is, did President Trump or Vice President Pence have any awareness about this proximal origins article that Fauci used to say it came from nature, from these scientists that he put together? Did they have any idea that he was going to go out and make that announcement on the White House lawn when he did? And that would tell you quite a bit as well.
Well, the thing that always, as I've said many times in the show, I was not exactly a star in my science class. But the thing that always sort of bothered me is, I do bring a little sort of common sense that makes me question things a little bit. I didn't understand why it would, what was blamed as the origin for the longest time was a wet market. And what a coincidence. The wet market was about 4 blocks away from the Wuhan lab. And everybody was denying that there would be a leak out of the lab, when in the lab they were working with this virus. So it always struck me as peculiar that the one place that at least, would likely have it, and I'm not suggesting anything sinister, but it's more likely, at least to me, common sense. And even if I'm wrong, there was never sufficient evidence presented, at least that I saw, that would convince me of anything.
Yeah, and typically if something has come from nature, you find the animal, you find the source. That never has happened with this, even though thousands and thousands of animals were tested. And the very fact is, EcoHealth Alliance was doing the very type of research that they described is the very type of research that could make COVID-19. And keep in mind, they were denied a grant from DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They were denied there because it was too risky. They went over to NIH, they got the grant, Dr. Fauci signed it, and Dr. Fauci, I believe, felt that if we can actually create a virus before it occurs in nature and have the vaccine for it, then we'll be ready to go. Well, there may be a lot of good money involved with that, and Tulsi Gabbard alluded to that in her statement.
But what would have possibly been the motive? Was just that he knew better than everybody else, or he wanted to be ahead of the game in case there was a big virus that did show up on the scene? Because even President Obama, I think, put a moratorium on gain of function research during the period. It's been highly controversial within the government. So, what would have been the motive for Dr. Fauci, even not to have been 100% straight on this?
Well, again, the motive. Remember, he said he's the science. And he wanted this type of science to take place where you could try to predict what might occur in nature. But the difference is in the more modern times, during this time, they could actually create virus in the lab by taking parts from other viruses. And it's sort of like Legos, where the original gain of function was you were speeding up evolution within animals by taking a virus, putting it in an animal, bringing it right to another animal as it mutates. And so, that seems to me a little less dangerous than actually taking the most dangerous parts of a virus, the most infectious parts of a virus, and putting them together in the lab. And they were doing this in not the highest security lab. It was in a BSL-2, not a 3 or 4, which has greater security and less chance of a lab leak.
Well, there's still, let's hope that we get more information, because there's obviously still something that at least I'm still interested in, to find out what happened. Congressman Brad Wenstrup, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Coming up, that was fast. Luigi Mangione's lawyers with a surprise announcement. That one, the record continues.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 92 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Don't place your order until after you've watched the 3 videos on our website.
A Luigi Mangione flip-flop. As you probably know, 2 days ago, lawyers for Mangione said their client would be asserting a psychiatric defense in Mangione's New York State murder case. His lawyers announced that their plan was to argue that Mangione suffered from extreme emotional disturbance when he gunned down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. But one day after announcing that defense strategy, Mangione's lawyers announced they will not be arguing extreme emotional disturbance when a state trial begins on September 8th. So what is the defense strategy? Criminal defense attorney Ken Belkin joins me. Ken, you and I talked about this 2 days ago. Have you figured out, in light of the fact that they said they were going to use this defense, and you and I both I mean, I won't speak to you, but I think we both thought it was not going to be a successful one. But what happened, do you think, in the last 36 hours?
Look, I mean, everything about this case is kind of a Hail Mary from the defense perspective. There's a mountain of evidence against Mr. Mangione to contend with. I would be wildly speculating, though, if I could tell you what happened that would cause them within 24 hours to withdraw notice of this defense. And it seems like there's some sort of breakdown in communication, maybe between attorney and client. He's got very experienced attorneys. They're among the best attorneys that practice criminal defense in New York City, which is where I practice. So I feel like I'm qualified to make that assessment. But it is very unusual that this notice would be withdrawn. And I would have to assume it was at the request of Mangione himself.
I bet I'd be willing to bet $100 on your side of it. It does sound like, I mean, the lawyers aren't going to make fools of themselves and come out. They've had the case for a long time and make this assertion is going to do this defense. I know one of the lawyers at least has been on this show, and then all of a sudden, 36 hours they flip. It means they went back into the cell block, and their client's insisting on doing something they don't want, and they don't have any other choice. And it makes it look like the lawyers are the ones who are being odd or peculiar, when it's really that they're doing their job representing their client, who probably, I'd say, but that's what I think you said too, is that he's saying he doesn't want to do this, although there is some speculation that it may have an impact on his federal trial in January, but I don't think that's why.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to try and get inside the head of Luigi Mangione. But remember, with this defense, he is essentially admitting that he did it, albeit he did it under an extreme emotional disturbance. And it's not a defense that would, result in any sort of acquittal. It would just sort of mitigate and knock down the murder to manslaughter. So he'd only be looking at a top sentence of 25 years, whereas on the murder, he could get a possible top sentence of life in jail. The fact that he has asked them to withdraw it leads me to believe he might have in his mind some sort of belief that he can come out of this and get an acquittal.
Well, he must. I mean, he might be a little bit touched in the head, which is, of course, not insanity defense. But I mean, he might have delusions of grandeur, thinking that he's going to save the United States, all the people from healthcare executives or whatever, and think that he's even got a mission or a purpose to do this. And his lawyers are sort of stuck with him if that's what that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, his lawyers are certainly stuck with him, and they have to act at his direction. That's the reality. I also think if there were ever a jurisdiction that you could have jury nullification in play with a case like this, in the highly politicized arena that is Manhattan, where potential jurors would come from, let's not forget, this was a jury pool that convicted Donald Trump on what was essentially made-up felonies in my analysis. So if any juror pool would be tainted to the extent that they might acquit Luigi Mangione, it could be Manhattan.
Well, I'm sort of lucky to have jury nullification when I had clients that were in deep trouble. I never had one of those juries. Anyway, Ken Belkin, thank you again.
Thanks, Greta.
Thank you again. Coming up, will Trump's deal with Iran, is it going to hold up? That when the record continues.
Survey says. Celebrating 50 years of the Family Feud. Richard Karn and John O'Hurley share their favorite moments as hosts. America, right now. Tomorrow morning at 9. Only on Newsmax.
It's me, Ricky. You grew up with me. I am using Fatty 15 to get me to feel and look the best I've ever felt at my age. The C15 nutrient has been known to strengthen our cells and slow the aging process at a cellular level. I urge you to try Fatty 15.
Life with ear ringing sounded like a constant train whistle I couldn't escape. Then I started taking lipoflavonoid. With 60 years of clinical experience, it's the #1 doctor-recommended brand for ear ringing. And now I'm finally free. Take back control with lipoflavonoid.
Sensitive mouth and gums? Ever heard of Closest mouthwash? Your dentist and hygienist have. They know Closest is ultra gentle for sensitive mouths with non-burning mouthwashes that freshen breath, improve gum health, and strengthen teeth. Closest, the gentle mouthwash for sensitive mouths.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
If you know luxury, it's not just award-winning, it's rewarding. Sattva mattresses support all types of sleepers with durable steel coils and plush organic cotton. Sattva luxury mattresses are handcrafted and assembled in American factories using globally sourced premium materials and brought directly to you with our complimentary in-home delivery and setup service. Sattva, luxury mattresses made affordable.
Our #1 draft pick for colon cancer screening is one that's non-invasive. He detects 95% of colon cancers, similar to colonoscopy. The new Cologuard Plus test.
The Cologuard Plus test is not for those at high risk. False positive and negative results may occur.
Satellite internet that's fast, reliable, and installed by professionals. For work, for play, for every day. Available anywhere you call home. Visit Viasat.com/internet now or call 833-8Viasat to sign up today.
Look what I just found. No ding decline on the Experian app. They show me credit cards that won't hurt my credit if I'm not approved. Turns out I care about my credit health too. Get the app from your big financial friend. Experian.
Moving at the speed of business means flying commercial won't always cut it. Can't afford to waste time. Delays mean missed opportunities and lost revenue. That's unacceptable. Fly when you want, where you want with Fly USA. No hidden fees, no restrictions. You can choose any size jet, anywhere. Plus 5-star service and the best response time in the industry from a US-based concierge. Fly like a pro with Fly USA. Book your first flight at flyusa.com and use promo code USA for up to $5,000 off.
Spring. Things out here have gotten a little too comfortable. It's time to run it. Run it until the grass becomes a lawn. Until the hedges duck for cover. Then run it again. Right now, get up to $50 off select AK battery tool sets. Steel.
Here's the news in a soundbite shuffle. So today, what are the bites grabbing our attention and something you may have missed? Today, it is 2 senators, 1 governor, and a heated exchange on Capitol Hill.
The stock market just hit a new all-time high. The 401ks just hit a new all-time high. And oil is dropping like a rock. Other than that, it's another day in paradise.
Ms. Lake accused one of our sitting colleagues of being controlled by the cartels. You had no evidence then, nor do you have any evidence now, that our colleague Senator Gallego is controlled by cartels, do you, Ms. Lake?
Well, we provided the receipts. The father was a high-level drug trafficker, trafficking hundreds of thousands.
You said that Ruben Gallego was controlled by the cartels.
History demonstrates that giving billions of dollars to theocratic lunatics who want to murder us is an exceptionally bad idea.
We heard from the governor, but we haven't heard from you yet about this investigation. What do you want to say?
I'm just so grateful for this inspiration and leadership. We need more of this.
Hey, this is stuff that happens in other countries.
In the last 8 months, progressive and democratic socialist candidates all over this country have been winning major victories.
That, of course, was Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont talking about socialist candidates winning in America. Meanwhile, now Italy is mad at us, or at least Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, is annoyed with our president. In an interview with an Italian broadcaster, President Trump said this about Prime Minister Meloni at the G7 this week, quote, "She's probably happy I talked to her. I did not have to talk to her. She begged me to take a photo with her. She wanted a photo with me so much, I would not have even done it, but I felt sorry for her," end quote. Well, the Italian broadcaster released a dubbed version of the Trump interview, not the actual audio in English, and Meloni seemed furious.
Dunque, certe cose meritano una risposta immediata. Le dichiarazioni di Donald Trump sono dichiarazioni totalmente inventate, sono francamente allibita, non so perché il Presidente degli Stati Uniti si comporti così con i propri alleati, però una cosa se la deve ricordare, io e l'Italia non imploriamo mai.
The two leaders did seem to get along at the G7. They were seen chatting and laughing. I suspect that Trump will get a cold shoulder, though, from her at the next G7. Coming up, a socialist is close to becoming mayor of our nation's capital. That when the record continues.
A closer look at America's favorite redhead, Lucille Ball. Her quirky personality captivated audiences and helped chart a new course for women in Hollywood. Watch Lucy, Queen of Comedy, this weekend on Newsmax TV.
Are you ready to save big this summer?
Doesn't everybody want to save money?
The Consumer Cellular Summer Switch event is finally here. You could cut up to 50% off your big wireless bill. And right now, save an extra $50 off with code SAVE50.
Go save some money. It's just a great deal.
You'll get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage you get from big wireless for up to 50% off.
Same tower, same coverage. I'm getting big wireless coverage without the big wireless price tag. Big cities, small cities, rural areas, rock solid.
Now is the best time to switch all year during the Consumer Cellular Summer Switch event. You could cut up to 50% off your big wireless bill. And right now, save an extra $50 off with code SAVE50.
I switched to save money. I stayed because I love Consumer Cellular.
Consumer Cellular customers ranked us #1 in network coverage satisfaction.
The customer service is amazing.
You get a person right away, and it's inexpensive, too.
Yes.
Get unlimited for just $35 a month for one line.
I got the benefits of ARP and the quality service from Consumer Cellular, so what a happy marriage. It's just a great deal.
You can keep your number, you can keep your phone.
Or get a new one. We've got all the latest phones. You can talk with a U.S.-based sales rep in about 15 seconds.
That phone call reduced my bill by almost 50%.
I'm saving about $50 a month.
The switch process was incredibly easy. Touch a button, and that was it. I was switched. Save money. Save money. Make the switch.
The Summer Switch event is the perfect time to make the switch. You could cut your bill by up to 50% and call right now to save an extra $50 off with code SAVE50. And AARP members save even more. So call now and save big during the Consumer Cellular Summer Switch event. Call 1-800-649-1326. That's 1-800-649-1326.
The grind catches up with everyone, even me. That's why I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric to support my joint health. It's the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. It helps you keep doing the things you love at every age. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Artificial intelligence is transforming healthcare. This breakthrough technology is empowering researchers to discover new treatments and cures. AI is helping us manufacture smarter medical devices, and it's going to extend and improve the quality of our lives. AI is transformative, and it can be life-saving. China wants to dominate AI and surpass the U.S. in modernizing healthcare. America must lead. America must innovate. America must win. Let's protect our competitive edge.
This is keratin debris, where nail fungus grows. Nonix Nail Gel cleans out fungus by removing keratin debris. Using Nonix, 90% of nails improve. Get clinically proven results. So effective, it's money-back guaranteed.
Forget the warm-up. DirecTV got hot. They're on fire with more MLB games than anyone.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
11.
Is the memorandum of understanding with Iran strong and will it hold, or is it fragile and hanging by a thread? President Trump is facing some headwinds.
You had talked about you only wanted unconditional surrender. And
well,
the MOU doesn't look like unconditional surrender.
Well, it really probably is unconditional surrender.
It is?
I think so.
Today, Vice President Vance was supposed to go to Switzerland to work on finalizing a peace deal, but his trip was postponed. The White House blaming logistics, but other indications point to what is happening in Lebanon. Iran said it wants the fighting between Hezbollah and Israel to stop. Overnight, Hezbollah killed 4 IDF soldiers. Israel responded by killing more than 40 in Lebanon, and then the day ended with a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel. Okay, New York, move over. Washington, D.C. is the next city to be inching closer to a socialist mayor. It's pretty much, though, a done deal with the primary mayoral win by Janice Lewis-George. Yesterday, 2 days after Election Day, the count was complete, and she won. I say it's a done deal that she will be the next mayor because 75% of registered voters in D.C. are Democrats. President Trump will not be happy when the inevitable happens in November.
Well, I wouldn't like it, and maybe we'd take back Washington and run it on the federal basis. We won't put up with it. We're not going to lose our businesses. By the way, Washington now is a safe, beautiful place.
Last night, Lewis-George responded to Trump's threat.
We are not going to get ICE off our streets by fearing the president, and we are not going to be able to stand up for our autonomy and fight for D.C. statehood ultimately by just complying in advance. I've also been very clear that I will work with anyone, including the president.
Another progressive Democrat is advancing in a crucial swing district. Early this morning, Matt Dunlap won the Democratic House primary for Maine's 2nd district. Since 2019, a Democrat has represented that district, but despite that, Trump has won the district 3 times. Republicans are hoping their candidate, former Republican Governor Paul LePage, will win that House seat. Meanwhile, the nation watches, in part because of the saying, as Maine goes, so does the nation. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum joins me, along with former DNC Deputy Press Secretary Jose Aristimuno. Jose, first to you. We're seeing an awful lot of socialist candidates. Everyone's there are a lot of them on the ballot. Are we seeing a real sea change in the Democratic Party?
Well, look, I don't think so, and I certainly hope we don't go that route. I think if history teaches us everything, when we go to the extra left or the extra right, we lose. I think we got to do what we did in New Jersey with the governorship, what we did in Virginia, and what we did even in Miami-Dade here in Florida when we won. We hadn't won in 20 years. So I think we got to go back to the middle. Obviously, D.C., in that specific example, I don't think it represents the Democratic Party as a whole, but I do think it's concerning.
Senator Santorum, the woman who won the primary in D.C., who's going to be the next mayor, she says she can work with President Trump. Your thoughts on that? I mean, I think that's a lot. Most we can ask from a lot of people is whether they can work across the aisle.
Well, let's wait and see. I mean, the policies she talked about during her campaign were not something that the president's going to roll over on. I mean, getting ICE out of D.C. and not allow, basically treating all illegal immigrants as people who should stay here, and whether you've committed crimes or not. All of those things the president's not going to put up with. And unlike people who criticize the president for stepping, for exaggerating his power. In this case, he actually has a lot of power when it comes to the District of Columbia. It's a federal district. It's shared. There's home rule, but there's shared power between the president and the mayor and council. So I have no doubt the president's going to exercise authority if they stop enforcing crime, if they stop enforcing immigration laws and the like.
And of course, I mean, that power the president has is actually embedded in the words of the Constitution, so he's got some power behind him. Jose, yeah. Who do you think, who's going to be your front-running candidates, do you think, in 2028, if you had to guess today?
Look, I hope it's not Kamala Harris. I'll tell you that much, Greta. I hope somebody like Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin, he such a huge state as California, the biggest economy almost in the world. I think he can do really, really well in a presidential election.
Do you think Kamala Harris, Jose, does want to run? Do you have any sense that she has the inkling that she was? I mean, first time around, she didn't make it to Iowa. when she tried to run for president. So she's got a headwind, and which is, I think, is actually a bigger problem of what her party thinks about it than the actual race in 2024.
Look, I think Kamala Harris will have the same problem that J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio will have with Trump, because they got to run on the president's record, J.D. and Marco. I think Kamala's got to do the same thing with Joe Biden. It's going to be very difficult, Greta, for them to distance themselves from their former bosses. I think somebody like Newsom, somebody like Shapiro, Wes Moore is going to have a whole lot better chance to talk to the American people.
Senator Santorum, the question of whether or not whoever runs on the Republican Party, I guess, as Jose points out, if it's Secretary of State Rubio or Vice President Vance, they do run on President Trump's record unless they leave soon and separate themselves. And it may be that his record is something that they want to run on.
Well, it certainly you don't run unless you think you have a chance of winning, and right now, I think the Republicans are in pretty good shape. I mean, the economy's starting to bounce back. You've got a border that's been solved. You've got a lot of positives that whoever it is, whether it's Rubio or Vance, can run on, and you can also run on, just providing a little bit more stability, a little bit, less chaos than the Donald Trump White House. And there, I think they can separate themselves. I think a lot of reason that Trump is so controversial or is because he is so chaotic in the way he governs. And I think both Rubio and Vance can separate themselves on that front, which is important.
Jose, it seems that with the exception of George Bush 41, is that after a president's had 8 years, that all of a sudden the electorate wants another party. They had 8 years of Clinton, and they decided they wanted Bush. They had 8 years of Obama, and then they wanted Trump. Is it a heavier lift coming out of 8 years of a particular party?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's human psychology that people just want to change, and I think people got to do their homework on both parties. I always tell folks, if you're not in the game of politics, maybe you should be an independent. And if you've seen, the independents have sort of gone away from Republicans lately because of all their political dramas. I think my party has a bunch of problems of their own. I'm very moderate myself. I think whoever can talk to the American people and not focus so much on attacking the other side, but rather, hey, this is what I bring to the table. This is how I can solve your economy. Make sure that you pay less at the grocery store, pay less at the pump. This is how I'm going to help you lower inflation. I think that's going to be the winning candidate coming 2028.
Senator, who do you think the Republicans don't want to run, be the lead Democrat to run in 2028?
Everyone talks about, well, there's some moderate Democrats here. Please point to me a moderate Democrat. I mean, they all have basically adopted the Bernie Sanders playbook. They're all leftists. They're all socialists. And if you remember at the debate where they asked, where should illegals vote? Yeah, everybody said illegals should vote. I mean, they've completely lost their anchor. And there may be some moderate Democrats, they may be one of them, but they're not running for president, and they have no chance if they do. And if you look at, you mentioned a couple of moderate governors in New Jersey and Virginia. Well, guess what? They haven't governed as moderates. And if you look at states like Pennsylvania, who's winning primaries? Socialists. Whether in Congress for the House, for the Senate, and the legislature, it's becoming the Democratic Socialist Party, and that's who's their nominee is going to be.
Senator Rick Santorum and Jose Aristimuno, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Coming up, they love America, and we're loving them back. World Cup visitors embracing American food, culture, and customs, but some are having a little bit too much fun. That when the record continues.
I've been in the fitness industry for more than 25 years, and Fatty 15 is a built-in recovery system for your cells. You can't have a healthy outside if you're not taking care of the inside. Try Fatty 15.
Think back to the last time you got your car repaired. I'm going to go ahead and guess that you weren't thrilled with the price. That's because you didn't have CarShield. With CarShield, you pay a little now so you can save a lot later. Don't waste your hard-earned money on car repairs. Get a plan, like me.
I've been a CarShield customer for over 5 years, and it saved me over $13,000, and my rate has never gone up. I have saved over $8,000 total.
Here's the truth. Your out-of-warranty vehicle is going to break down, and you could save thousands. CarShield plans cover up to 5,000 parts and systems. They also include money-saving benefits like 24/7 nationwide roadside assistance, courtesy towing, and rental car options. Lock in your rate today with the Price Lock Guarantee. Make the smart decision. Call CarShield now.
CarShield has saved drivers more than $1 billion in car repairs. Call and get your free quote. Call 800-478-0964.
It's 2 a.m., your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed, and you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
Sensitive mouth and gums? Ever heard of Closest mouthwash? Your dentist and hygienist have. They know Closest is ultra gentle for sensitive mouths with non-burning mouthwashes that freshen breath, improve gum health, and strengthen teeth. Closest, the gentle mouthwash for sensitive mouths.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 92 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Don't place your order until after you've watched the 3 videos on our website.
The World Cup is drawing international fans to 11 cities across the United States. And from what we have seen, a lot of these fans new to America, they love America when I see it.
I'm an American, baby, and apparently Walmart is a spot to go to get all this stuff that you can't get back home in Ireland.
I can refill it as many times as I want. Bring it on. Bring these to England.
You have the cowboy hat on. Talk to me about why did you decide to wear it today?
Because we went to Fort Worth and we decided to try to be like locals.
And tonight in Boston, Scotland is playing Morocco. Last weekend, the Scots drank the city of Boston dry. Now everyone is wondering, will they do it again? Will Scotland fans cause another beer drought in Boston? Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in Minnesota and former NFL sideline reporter Michele Tafoya joins me. And Michele, isn't it fun to listen to these people with these heavy accents from other parts of the world, and they're singing American songs and they're saying how much they love everything?
It's fantastic. I watch these and I get kind of goosebumpy. I mean, I think of all the times that I have traveled around the world or taken my kids to different places, and you get immersed in the culture and you sing the songs. It's so great to see everyone coming here and being a tourist in America and falling in love with all of it and having fun. And it's just been fantastic.
Well, I think America is also falling in love with them, too. I mean, there was a story about a team in, I think, Lawrenceville, Kansas, where there's a training camp, and the team and the city has just embraced the team. I forgot which country it was, but they're just having a blast having this team in there, and they're celebrating with them, and so it's fun for Americans, too.
It really is great. I've talked to people in these different cities who say it is so much fun to have a team from another country based in wherever you happen to be, Seattle, LA, wherever it is, because you just you sense them all around, you sense their fans. And then, they travel cross country to these different places. The U.S. playing in Seattle, almost finished as we speak, leading 2-0 over Australia, which is another big win for Team USA. But to have this influx of all these different cultures and they are having so much fun. And it's not just that they're having fun with their own countrymen and women, they're having fun with us. And so I hope what's happening too, I was seeing that there was a watch party in Seattle, Greta, outside of the stadium, down by that Fisherman's Wharf that everyone knows about in Seattle where they throw the fish. And whenever Team USA scored, these people went crazy. And there were hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of them out on the street. So what I kind of hope is that Americans are falling back in love with America.
And the Scots in Boston are a riot. I mean, they're the funniest. I mean, drinking the city dry. I mean, they're hysterical.
Yeah, they are,
wonderful.
and it's right on brand, isn't it? It's the Scots are one of a kind.
Yeah, except there are a lot of. My mother's 100% Irish, so I could say this. There are a lot of Irish in Boston that give the Scots a run for their money on
that is true.
On the beer. But
that is true.
All right, let me just ask a political question. You're running for U.S. Senate. I'm just curious because I'm from the Midwest, as you and I've discussed. Is that when you go around Minnesota, what's sort of the constant question that you get asked about? What's the issue?
What are you going to do about fraud? And how are we going to hold these people accountable who allowed this fraud to happen? I think Minnesotans are gratified by the feds coming in and making arrests and making their presence known and not really resolving the financial part of the fraud, but holding people accountable. But what I think Minnesotans really want to see, Greta, is they want to see the people in charge. No one in the government yet has been held accountable. No one's been fired. No one from these various agencies have been fired. The Attorney General, Keith Ellison, and the Governor, Tim Walz, have been pretty much unscathed through all of this. And people are having a hard time understanding why that is. So as much as the feds are getting involved, I believe Minnesotans want to see it even more. And they want the questions asked. Now, it's these two that I just mentioned, the governor and the attorney general, have been referred to the DOJ. And I had a radio host in town ask me recently, do you really think there's something to be criminally charged here? The question is, why not find out? And this is how you do that. And that's what Minnesotans want.
And just broadly speaking, there's so much government waste we've been talking about for decades here in this city, and that's sort of like fraud too, where you spend money. Michele Tafoya, thank you. Always nice to see you.
Great to see you, Greta. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Coming up, one of our viewers sent us a video of an uninvited visitor coming to his door making demands. That visitor is going to shock you. That when the record continues.
Greg Kelly over at Newsmax. The Newsmax people have been really, really terrific. Newsmax has been terrific.
President Trump is right. Millions are watching Newsmax and Greg Kelly. Tune in tonight.
In America, we believe in hard work, family, and taking care of our own. That's why SafeStep walk-in tubs are proudly designed, built, and assembled in the USA, in the heart of Tennessee, by more than 300 hardworking Americans.
My name is Michelle Johnson. Lamination is where we put the fiberglass, resin, and gel coat on the actual product.
Skilled craft professionals, building every tub with precision, care, and pride. With a low step-in design, built-in safety features, and soothing therapeutic jets, SafeStep helps you stay comfortable, confident, and in control.
My name's Angela Peters. We make sure everything is as perfect as it can be.
When you choose SafeStep, you're not just investing in your home, you're supporting American families and American jobs. Call now for your free in-home consultation and ask about our special offer. SafeStep walk-in tubs, made in Tennessee, made for you.
There's a lot of technology with the car. You have a computer for every little thing. A repair can run from $400 to thousands of dollars. So it's important to make sure that you have some kind of protection. That way they don't pay out of pocket.
CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company. It helps get your covered repairs paid.
David, hey, good to meet you. Nice to meet you, man. How long you been working on cars for?
For 12 and a half years.
How is it working with customers, for those past 12 years?
It's a mixed emotions because customers come in and they don't know what problem the car has. It could be something simple to something that's going to be really expensive.
Walking into a mechanic shop with the unknown of what that's going to cost is stressful. But with CarShield, I feel protected.
With CarShield, you have that peace of mind. You're not going to be stuck for a huge thousands of dollars bill.
CarShield offers plans that cover repairs on up to 5,000 parts of your car, including your transmission, engine, electronics, and more, which gives you freedom from stress about breakdowns and puts you back in the driver's seat.
For those big ticket items that you need to repair, what's the usual dollar amount that you see?
One repair was $11,900 to repair the transmission from a 2015 car.
That could throw a huge wrench into a family's life.
That's why protection is important.
I've been a CarShield customer for over 5 years, and it saved me over $13,000, and my rate has never gone up.
I have saved over $8,000 total.
So how does CarShield help customers save money?
CarShield steps in to help customers pay for cover repairs. That way they don't have to worry about coming out of pocket. It's very fast. Customers only worried about the car getting fixed.
And there you have it. America's most trusted auto protection is the real deal, y'all. Call today.
Call to get your free quote and lock in your rate. Plans cover cars, trucks, and SUVs 20 years old or newer. Choose a flexible month-to-month rate that works for you. Call now. Call 800-475-9136. 800-475-9136. 800-475-9136.
Think you need a new roof? Think again. Most roofing companies only make money one way, by selling you a new roof. But what if your roof isn't worn out, just dried out? And with just a little love, you could put off an expensive roof replacement for up to 15 years, at a fraction of the cost of a new roof. Roofmax is a scientifically engineered restoration formula that brings your shingle life back to new. Scan the code and get a free roof tune-up with your Roofmax restoration.
Now to a video sent in by one of our viewers. John Barrett from Pleasant Lake, Indiana, sent us this. John says this squirrel visits him every single day, but the squirrel has a request. Actually, it's a demand. Pecans. So every day, John feeds him pecans, and of course gave him the nickname Pecan. What else? Thank you for watching, John, and sharing that video. And do you have any good videos? If so, send them to the email address on your screen. Email Greta@newsmax.com. I may show them. I always watch them anyway. Thank you for watching. Ed Henry's The Big Take is next. Stay with Newsmax. Have a great weekend.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.